Chances are, you might know someone who's struggling with addiction, but it is a guarantee that you will see someone who is an addict, whether it be a family member or a friend, or just someone you see on the street in passing. Addiction to substances is a plague that plagues all of the human race and can change our priorities drastically and ruin our lives, such as being unable to pay for housing due to your spending all of your money on alcohol or in drugs. Or a parent spending their entire paycheck on these substances. These substances can be so addictive that you would give anything for the next hit, even if it hurts those you love. Rehab centers are available, but not everybody wants or can get the help they need. Even if they do, it is a hard and painful process as to detach yourself from addiction. The temptation to get more of which that holds you back is very strong. In fact, according to an interview with Taylor, who runs a street-based clinic, 80% of the people there are homeless, which only makes their situation worse. If there was a way to block the addictive and enjoyable properties of these substances, the process of separating yourself from addiction would be easier and much more effective. My name is Devlin Toliver Travis, and I am here to present a deep brain stimulation device, or DBS for short, that is designed to do exactly that. Of course, I could not actually make this implant due to a lack of degrees and expertise, so at the very least, I could research DBS and create a basic idea on how said device would work. The device will act as a sort of gatekeeper for the limbic system and prevent dopamine rushes from the substances that hijack the system, and maybe even include a little bit of negative reinforcement in the form of making the user feel sick in response to them trying to consume the substances. But before even thinking about how such a device would work, we must understand how addiction works and how you get addiction, or get addicted. To do this, we must understand the limbic system of the brain, also known as the reward circuit. The limbic system controls the ability to feel pleasure and the release of dopamine in the brain as a reward for doing certain actions. This part of the brain is already used in the entertainment industry, whether it be a short-term reward system where you can get a quick dopamine boost for doing something easy and mindless like watching a video and easily skip to a different video when you get bored of that one. Or a long-term reward system where you are rewarded for doing something that involves focus for a long amount of time, like watching a long movie. God bless you, Stan. But whatever the action was that caused this dopamine rush to your brain, you will want more. Sometimes this can lead to bad habits and addiction. All of this is controlled by the limbic system, and as shown, it is easy to get a reaction from it without even using chemistry or watching a single episode of Breaking Bad. But what if you had an understanding of brain chemistry and brain science and wanted to increase the weight of your pockets or get a bit of pleasure? This is where drugs come in. Not only do these chemicals cause a huge rush of dopamine and pleasure that makes you feel like an all-powerful being, but they are often designed with addiction in mind that you keep buying, and a big chance is you will buy again if possible, and even become a repeat customer. Even worse is that each time you get a hit of this drug, your brain will become less and less reactionary to this drug and will require more and more to get the same reaction, thus making the price for a single hit higher and higher. Drug abuse and addiction costs American society $740 billion a year lost in medical costs and workplace productivity, alongside crime-related costs. But the highest cost, I'm sure we can all agree, is more than economic losses. But what of this device? How will it help? First, I need to choose a drug to target as an example. For that, I choose heroin. Since it is a drug I've commonly seen being used downtown in SF, San Francisco, in broad daylight while riding in the car. Keep in mind, in broad daylight where passing cars can see, just to put in perspective how big of an issue this is. But what damage does heroin do? What heroin is in origin is a pain relief drug made from morphine and opium poppy seeds. Heroin is often used because of how it will temporarily relieve pain from the user, but those are the same side effects that have the same life-ruining properties on the brain. The brain produces natural opium when you are in pain to help with discomfort. What heroin does is that it binds itself to the opioid receptors in your brain, and since it is much, much more potent than natural opium, the chemical causes a dopamine response, and the user enters a relaxed and happy state while making it so the brain produces less and less natural opium over time, making it harder for the user to go drug-free. Not good. Right now, there are two main ways to treat someone struggling with addiction. One is a pill called methadone. The only issue is that methadone is a daily pill that one could easily skip if they decide they no longer want to take it so that they may return to their old ways. The other choice is naltrexone, which just all-out eliminates the ability to get high for a whole month. The only issue with this option is that you must go in once a month for an injection. Once again, you could just skip an injection so you can once again take up these substances. Although naltrexone can now be taken as a implantable pill that slowly dissolves in your body, lasting for a time of 6 months. After 6 months, you can still just skip getting the next dose and return the drugs. Although 6 months is better than 1 month, I think we can do better. What this device shall do is not only block the release of dopamine, but also block all opium to the brain for a short amount of time, making it not only so that the drug is less enjoyable, but in the case of heroin and other drugs that need to be injected for their effects, the lack of opium makes the pain of the needle wound more intense due to a lack of pain relief. This serves as negative reinforcement alongside making the drug lose its reason for use. In other words, not only do you get nothing from stabbing your leg with a needle, but it also makes it a negative and painful experience for the user, or making the apathy towards the drug stronger, even turning into dislike. But how much does drug abuse really affect the world? And how will this neural implant really help people? According to Google, 74% of adults in the US have struggled with substance abuse in the past or are now. That's 19.7 million people. Is that not a huge number of people's lives being controlled by drugs? And considering everything we talked about earlier, this could all have a devastating impact on the world as a whole and cause an unreasonable amount of damage to the people near them in their lives. In fact, children who are surrounded by alcohol abuse while growing up are more likely to fall into alcoholism, either because of abuse directed towards them or other forms of bad parenting. So not only do these effects affect those the user loves, but can also cause the children of the user to go down the same dark path. But also the abuse of the substances can simply cause harm and trauma to all near that user. Ugh. And sadly, I was one of those who were caught in the crossfire of my father's alcohol abuse when I was 3 years old. Due to traumas from his childhood, my father would turn to alcohol to cope with his trauma. Unfortunately, his drinking would only get worse and worse as time went on, but eventually led to even the doctors telling him that if he doesn't stop, he's going to die. And he would. But a week before he died, he had an episode and forgot who me and my mother were, and began to verbally and physically assault my mother. Thankfully, me and my mother got out alive, but the damage was still done. When I was 4 years old, I would start taking therapy sessions and still do to this day, 10 years later. This is only one of many examples why addiction to such things is something that must be dealt with. These are examples of reasons to want a solution to addiction issues, but unfortunately, we do not have this neural implant yet, and even when such a device is made, there are still plenty of issues like accessibility and various moral issues, like if the choice of you getting a neural implant should be put in the hands of family members instead of you. Although, according to Dr. Jill Ostrom, who is one of the pioneers and head of DBS research and treatment, the use of DBS in this field is already being worked on. There are still ways of dealing with addiction right now, And the process of getting clean from addiction is a hard and painful one. But the consequences of addiction can ruin and harm the lives of you and the ones you loved. So, if you are a loved one or struggling with addiction, find the help required to deal with said issues. For if you don't, the lives of you and others will be affected if you don't. For sure, some of the greatest minds of their generation were lost to the consequences of addiction and were unable to bring great things upon this world. Imagine if these problems never happened. What if they were able to contribute great strides in technology and art? For all we know, we could have a cure to cancer by now if that mind didn't get stuck in the devil's dandruff, or if the mother of said child didn't drink during the pregnancy, thus harming that child's mind. Hopefully, we can have a future where none of these things happen. A world where we can have our eyes set on what is important and not where to get the next dose. A world where a child shall not grow up with their father coming home drunk and angered. And a world where I didn't have to waste 10 years of my life in therapy. I believe that this is something to strive and hope for, and something you should too. My name is Devlin Toliver Travis. Thank you for listening. Good night.